Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today is going to be the part 2 of the beginner platform series. In this episode, we're going to be working with the Tilemap, and we are also going to be implementing some physics to the player, so we can start moving the player around the map. Alright, so let's get started. To start things off, let's bring our map to the assets. For this, we're going to select the assets folder. We're going to use the file explorer, and we're going to copy the Palm Tree Island folder. I'm going to click it and drag to the assets. Now that it's imported, we can check the contents here. And we are going to be using this one, the terrain 32 by 32. You can see here, there is a very complete tile set. It has basically all the combinations that we might want. To use a tile map, we need to add it to the scene. So let's do this. Let's click on Add Child Node. Let's type tile map. Let's create one. And this should put the tile map right here. Let's move the tile map above the player, so the player renders on top of it. There are ways of solving this issue, but for now, let's just do it this way. When we click on the tile map, on the inspector, we can see that the tile set is empty. And that's because we didn't set any tile set yet. We also have other properties here, like layers, that will appear here. Let's go ahead and create a tile set. We're going to click on Empty, New Tile Set, and that will create a tile set for us. If we click on Tile Set again, this will expand the tile set section, and now we have access to more properties. For example, the tile size. And as we can see here, on the assets, the tile size is 32 by 32. So let's change it here. And as we make the changes, you might have noticed that also changed the grid. Good. On the bottom part of the editor, we have tile map selected. And currently, we have no way of placing tiles. And that's because we don't have imported any tile set yet. To do this, let's click here where it says tile set. And this is where we are going to be working whenever you need to edit something related to the tile set. Let's drag and drop the terrain. And Godot right here will offer the option to automatically create all the tiles for this sprite that we just dropped here. We can choose no and create the tiles manually. We will have the chance to do this when we start working with animated tiles, but for this one, let's accept it. So we're going to click yes. And as you can see, Godot have created all the tiles that we're going to be using. Now, if you head back to the tile map right here, we can see that we have the tiles. And we can start clicking on them, and then we can draw them on the screen. We can select more than one. We can select like this and do big blocks. And we can start drawing more and more. However, this is not the preferred way of doing this, because right now we have to manually choose each tile. Godot has a nice function for this, and it's a set of features that is called terrain sets, and is very powerful. Let's use them. I'm going to remove all of this. You can just right click to remove a tile. And here on terrain sets, let's add an element to this. And right here, it will create a terrain set for us. And we can also expand here on terrains and add a new element. And this will be named as terrain 0 by default. Let's change this name to Palm Tree Island. Say Palm Tree island, and let's say ground, because this is going to be the ground. The color here is not very important, but it gotta be something that you can easily identify when drawing over the tiles. And for each terrain set, we have some modes. We have match corners and sides, match corners, and match sides. Each one of them are for a specific type of tile set, but they work basically the same. Let's take a look on match corners and sides, as this one is the most complex one. And I think that when you understand this one, the other two are really simple. Let's head back to the tile set. And right here in this section with the tiles, we can click on this brush right here where it says paint. And then it says painting properties, and it asks us to select a property so we can start editing. We are going to come here and select terrains. It's going to ask us to specify which terrain set we want to work. We're going to say terrain set 0, and then which terrain we want to work. That is the palm tree island ground. With this option selected, if we click on one of these, little squares will appear, so we can start painting the rules of the terrain. Before we start painting the rules, I want to explain to you how these rules work and what each one of these squares represents. Godot will try to place the tiles automatically for us. And to do this, it's going to use a rule that we are going to paint on each one of these. When we paint this square right here, and we place something here, let's say right here, Godot will look on the other squares that is surrounding this one, and we'll try to identify one tile that we marked that matches this pattern right here. So in this case, it's going to use this one. If we were to paint like this, then Godot will not use this tile. But if in the map we paint this one right here, then it will use this tile. And if you paint this one and then this one, it will select this tile. But if we have this and we paint this one right here, it will not select this one because we don't have this rule right here. I hope that made sense. Now let's head back to Godot and start painting our terrains. As we saw, this one is super simple. We want to draw this one when we are surrounded by tiles. This one right here, it will be like this, and all of this is going to work like this. If you paint something accidentally, you can always right click and it will remove the square that you painted. Alright, so now if we go back to the tile map, and instead of tiles we choose terrains, and we select the palm tree island ground, and we start painting, you can see that Godot will automatically adjust the tiles for us. Like this. However, you can see that we don't have all the tiles yet, and that's okay. Let's leave it here and let's head back to the tile set. I like to do this one by one. Let's go step by step, and then I will fill all the tiles, and I suggest you to stop and try to do it yourself before copying what I'm about to show you. Let's make this one. The rule for this one is whenever you have something in the middle and on the right side, but we don't have anything over nor on the sides or the bottom. And this one will be like this, and this one like this. If we head back to the tile map now, and remove this, and we repaint this, there we go. We have this one. With time, this will be super intuitive for you, and we'll do this in no time. Since I already know this map, and I already know the patterns here, I'm going to paint all of them. That should be enough. If we head back now to the tilemap and select this, we should be able to draw any shape you want for the map. And if you hit play, you can see the map on screen. However, if you start trying to walk, we're going through the map, and that's because we didn't set any kind of collision yet for the player or the tilemap. Let's set the collision for the player first, and then let's head over to the tilemap and do the collision there. Let's select the player, and we can notice that we have this warning right here that says this node has no shape, so it cannot collide or interact with other objects. Alright, let's add a shape to this. Let's right click it, add child node, and let's type shape. And it offers us the collision shape 2D. Note that this is for 2D, we're not using 3D. So let's hit create. And this will add a collision shape 2D. Now you can notice that the warning here is gone, but we have another warning here. It says the shape must be provided for the collision shape 2D to function. Please create a shape resource for it. And if you go to the inspector, we can see that we have no shape resource here. If we click on this, it's going to present us a few options for the collision shape that we want. I have seen people using the capsule shape 2D, and that works okay for some cases, but I don't like it because it has some weird interactions when approaching cliffs and jumping and doing some corner corrections. I don't think it's as great as doing it with a rectangle shape and then manually adjusting for those cases. So we're going to be using rectangle shape 2D option. When you click it, we can see here in the player that we have a collision shape. Cool. We can click on these circles right here and create a collision shape for the player. Let's make a collision shape like this. And let's bring this down to here. Now, one very important thing to keep in mind here is when we select the animated sprite, if you go to the offset, we have this option, flip horizontal. Remember that you use this to flip the sprite. And if you click on this, the collision should remain on the same place. Okay, for example, if we were to have this, and you're gonna flip here, you can see that the front of the player here, the direction that the player is facing right here, has a collision shape on this pixel. However, if we flip the player back, we don't have the same collision shape here. So we must be careful with this. This should be more or less aligned with the collision shape. Now, if we go back here, you can see that we have exactly what we wanted. If you hit play and we start walking on the map, we're still not colliding with the map. And that's because we didn't set the layers or the mask for the player and neither the tilemap. Let's start with the player. Right here, on the inspector for the player, we have this tab right here, this section that is called collision. And here we have layer and mask. The way that you can think about layer and mask is the layer is where this node belongs, and the mask means what layers this node will interact with. For example, if you have players sitting on the layer 1, and let's say that the ground and all the other objects that we must collide are sitting on the layer 2, the collision mask for this should be the 2, and the layer for the player should be 1. If you want the player to collide with more masks, we can just add them here, and that will work. If you hover over this option right here, you see that it's called it layer 1. If you right click, you can rename the layer and give a different name. For example, let's call this one player. And now if you hover over it, it will say player. Another way of doing this is going to project settings, and if you scroll down here in the general tab, into layer names and go under to the physics, you can see all the layers for the physics. And let's add one name for the layer 2. Let's call it ground. That's where we're going to put all the colliders for the ground. Let's hit close. And now here on the mask, we say ground. Whenever we call move and slide, what is going to happen is Godot will move the player and collide and then slide it, but it will use this layer and this mask to define what collision should happen. All right, now that we have set the collision for the player, we can also go here into Debug, and we can enable visible collision shapes. Every time that we hit play now, we should be able to see the collision box for the player. Okay, let's add collision to the tilemap. For the tilemap, it's going to be very similar to what we did with the terrains. But instead of doing terrains, we're going to do physics. And as you can see here, we have this option, physics layers. And we are going to add an element to this. And this will prompt us with the collision layer and the collision mask. The collision mask for the ground will be empty. We don't need any collision mask for now. We are not interacting with anything. We don't want this to be checked. And for the collision layer, just remember what I said before. It is what layer this node belongs to. In this case, we're talking about the ground, so it's going to be the layer 2. Now, going back to the tile set, on the same section paint that we were to paint all the terrains, we're gonna select the terrains here. And now we have the option to do physics layer 0. That is this physics layers that we just added. We're gonna click on it. And you can see here that it gives us an option for the collision shape. We can add things, we can move things around. But we're going to be using this square collider, okay? The way that this works is we can paint which tiles we want to have the collider. For example, this one, and this one. So these 3 tiles now have collision. We should do this for all the tiles that we want collision. For example, this one that is in the middle should not have collisions because the player should not be able to reach here. So there's no need to put a collision block here. If for some reason you paint one by mistake, you can always select this and say clear, or just press C and then paint it over, and it will remove the collision. And if you press F, it will return the shape, and you can go back to clicking on the ones that you want. Let's select all of this, and that should be enough. Now, if you hit play, you can see that the map has collisions all over it. And if you will try to walk into them, the player will no longer be able to walk through the map. Collisions are working as expected. However, our player is just floating. And that's because we don't have any kind of gravity and we don't have any kind of jump. I want to do a more detailed approach to the player, and that's going to be on the next video. But for this one, we're going to be doing some basic physics. We can play around with the player in the map if you want to. Let's select the player script right here, and we're going to be making some modifications. The first one, before we start doing this, let's go to the project settings, input map, and let's add a new action to the jump. Let's create an action called button jump, btn_jump. Let's click add. It's going to add action. And then where it says listening for input, we can press space. It will automatically assign the space bar to the jump. First thing, let's move this line right here to the bottom, just before moving the slide. And let's add a new one here, like this, velocity y plus equals, and let's apply some gravity. Apply 900 times delta to the velocity y. This will slowly start to increase the velocity of the player towards the ground. If we hit play now, you can see that the player falls. And if you walk one side to the other, we are trapped here. Let's go ahead and disable the visible collision shapes from the debug option. Let's start from here. Let's detect if the player is actually pressing the jump button and if the player is grounded. Let's say input is action just pressed, button jump. This function right here tells us if the player just pressed this action. If the player holds this button on the next frame, this one will not be true. And is on floor, and you can check the documentation for this by holding Ctrl and left click on it, and it will tell you that this one will return true if the body collided with the floor on the last call of move and slide. So we can use this to detect if the player is grounded or not. The same way that we can use is on wall to detect when the player is colliding with a wall. Let's head back to the player and let's continue with this. If the player pressed the jump button and is grounded, we want to apply a velocity apply of, let's say, minus 300. This will give the player some vertical velocity so we can start going up on the screen. And also we can say sprite.play jump. We're going to play the jump animation. Whenever we reach the top of the jump and we start falling, we want to play the fall animation. So let's go ahead and do an else if right here and say, whenever we are not on floor and the velocity .y is greater or equals than 0, we're gonna say sprite.play fall. And we're going to be doing an else if right here for this, and then another else if right here, and we're going to change this to is on floor. And that should be all that we need to have a functioning jump in our game. Let's head back, hit play, and see. You can see that it played the animation when it was falling, and it can jump. However, it's not playing the jump animation as it should. And that's because right here we say if input is equal 0, we also need to check that we are on the floor. So let's add this. Is on floor. And now if you go back and hit play, whenever we jump, we have the nice jump animation. Let's go back and just fill this part of the map. That's easy with the terrains. And we can also have one tile here and another two here. And you can drag the player over here. Hit and play again. And now we should be able to explore the map a little bit. All right, that's gonna do for this video. In the next video, we are going to be taking a look at the player. We are going to be refactoring all of this code. This is not ideal, and I know I just wanted to give you something to play with the Tilemap and everything that we've built so far. On the next episode, we are going to be refactoring this, introducing finite state machines, and we're gonna give a little bit of juice to the player controls. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys on the next one. Bye!